I'm just doing the live streaming right now on wait a minute, let's get my microphone. Okay, great.
Yedida?
Yeah, hi.
I just have to apologize. I can only be here for the first half an hour. So.
All right, love. I'm glad you're here. It's very nice. Okay, fantastic. All right. Well, I hope other people are coming. I don't really know about changing the time. I think it's a bit confusing for people, to be honest. Other people asked for it to be earlier, but
I mean, I prefer it to be earlier. It was me, but
okay, fine. And no, you weren't the only one. Yeah, there were others as well. The more elderly in Israel said they found it a bit late for them. But I think it's, people are just sort of like not noticed or whatever. But anyhow, we will.
But it changes from week to week. I think that's a bit confusing, maybe.
Yeah, it's not,
you can't make it.
That's right. Unfortunately, sometimes I'm in Tel Aviv on Thursday, and I don't get away from there until 5:30, 5:45. I simply don't have time to get back in time for 6:30. I just can't do it. So maybe after this round we'll go back to 7:30. No, whatever. Okay, we're here, and that's the main thing. So let's start off with our tefillah, with our prayer. Oh, where am I? There. Oh, wait a minute. I need to do sharing. That's right. There you go. The sharing. That's a good idea. Sharing. Okay, let's get that out of the way. That big bar. What's it doing in the middle of everything? How do I get that out of the way? There we go. All right. Okay. So I want to pray that God sends wisdom into the hearts of the leaders of Israel and counselors to give good counsel to the leaders to know the right thing to do as regards the welfare of the state of Israel and the hostages. Nobody really knows what's right here. Okay, so I want to dedicate our learning for that and to that somehow or other God gets the hostages home without endangering the state of Israel. That's a real miracle we need. ריבון עולמים ואדוני אדונים, אב רחמן וסליחות, מודים אנחנו לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, וקידה בהשתחוויה שקרבתנו לתורתך ולעבודתך עבודת הקודש, ונתת לנו חלק בסודות תורתך הקדושה, מה אנו ומי חיינו, אשר עשית עמנו חסד גדול כזה, על כן אנחנו מפילים תחנוננו לפניך, שתמחול ותסלח לכל חטאותינו ועוונותינו, ואל יהיו עוונותינו מבדילים בינינו לביניך, וכן יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, שתכונן את לבבינו ליראתך ולבבך, ותקשיב אוזניך לדברינו אלה, ותפתח לבבינו הערל בסודות תורתך, ויהיה לימודנו זה נחת רוח, לפני כיסא כבודך כריח ניחוח, ותאציל עלינו אור מקור נשמתנו בכל בחינתנו, שיתנוצצו ניצוצות עבודיך הקדושים, אשר על ידם גלית דבריך אלה בעולם, וזכותם, וזכות אבותם, וזכות תורתם ותמימותם וקדושתם, יעמוד לנו לבל ניכשל בדברים אלו, ובזכותם תראה עינינו במה שאנו לומדים, כמאמר נעים זמירות ישראל, גל עיני והביטה נפלאות מתורתך, כי אדוני תן חוכמה מפיו דעת ותבונה, יהיו לו רצון נמרי פי, ויגון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי, אמן כן יהי רצון.
Amen.
Amen. Now, we're going to start with, here it is, Ma'amah. There's two articles in VaEtchanan, in the Zohar Perush. One is called the article of reverence, and one is called the article of love. And there are absolute key themes in the Sidra VaEtchanan, because of course we have, like, Moses is warning the people, telling them what will happen if they don't keep the commandments and how necessary it is for them to keep the commandments. And then, of course, we have the Shema, which is such a key element in our daily life. But it's really amazing, you come to Shema in the Kriyas HaTorah, and it's just really amazing, that you have that first paragraph there. And so it's preceded by reverence, and then you come into Shema. Actually, I did put on my where is it? On my well, it doesn't show it here. 1 second, let me find it. On the internet, I got ready. Here we go. Oh, why won't it? Oh, stop share. Stop share. And now, if I do this, here we go. Oh no, now I need to do share again. I'll get this one day. There. That's it. So here you can actually see it. Okay. If you start from chapter 6, but in fact, you've got this theme, a lot of the way through VaEtchanan. V'zot ha-mitzvah chukim v'mishpatim asher tzivah Hashem Elokeichem. And this is the commandment, the statutes and the ordinances which the Lord your God has commanded you, lelamed etchem, to teach you, la'asot ba'aretz, to do in the land, asher atem ovrim shama l'rishta, where you are going there to possess it. Leman tira et Hashem Elokecha, in order that you shall have reverence for the Lord your God. Lishmot kol chukotav, to guard, to keep all his statutes, mitzvotav, his commandments, asher anochi metzavcha, which I'm commanding you. Ata ubincha uben bincha, you and your son and your grandchild, kol yamei chayecha, all the days of your life, uleman yarichun yamecha, and so that your days may be prolonged. V'shamata Yisrael uv'shamata lasot asher yitav lecha. And so here, therefore, O Israel, and you shall keep them to do them. Asher yitav lecha, so it may be well with you. V'asher tilbun me'od, and that you may increase mightily. Kasher diber Hashem Elohei avotecha, as the Lord your God of your fathers spoke. Lecha eretz zavat chalav u'dvash, to give to you a land of milk flowing with milk and honey. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol modecha. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. V'hayu advarim ha'eleh asher anochi metzavcha hayom al levavecha. And these words should be, which I'm commanding you today, on your heart. V'shinamtem levanecha v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha b'veitecha v'lechtecha v'derech v'shach b'hukumecha. And shall teach them diligently to your children, and speak them when you're sitting in your house, and when you're walking by the way, and when you're lying down, and when you get up. Ukshartam le'ot al yadcha, and shall bind them for a sign on your hand. V'yulototafot b'neinecha, and they shall be for frontlets between your eyes. Ukataftem al mezuzot beitecha v'shorecha, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Okay, so that's the Torah that in the parasha that we're learning, and we are going, 1 second. Now I want to go to the Zohar, and I new share. That's it. Okay, so I'm going to just zoom out a little bit first. There we go, so we can see the Zohar itself. Now, the language of the Zohar regarding Yirah, I've translated as reverence, and that's quite a good term, but its original meaning, of course, is fear. And one of the reasons why I don't like saying fear, because it sums up a very distorted view of God, okay? And so I'm actually glad to have this opportunity to really discuss what Yirat Hashem actually is. Now, the language, and you will see the language here is not easy language, but there is, in fact, a very big article in the Zohar, in the very first volume of the Zohar, called, it's called Pikuda Kadma'a, the first commandment. And there, it's one of the articles which is such a key, which really changed my life, which is an article which really describes what Yirat Hashem actually is and what it isn't. So we're going to use what I've learned from that article to understand this article here, all right? And if necessary, we'll go and look it up. פיקוד על יראה באורך כלל ובאורך פרט. והיראה וכמנה בגין דאית עלי דבר נשת לדחלה מקמי קודש בריך הוא תדיר. כמו שכתוב, ליראה את השם הנכבד והנורא הזה, את השם אלוקיך. ובגין יראה דה יסתמא באורחוי, ויראה אתה הוא דאיקרא יראה, בגין דתמן שריה דחלה דקודש בריך הוא, איהו יראת השם לדחלה מיני, ודאיהו רזה דכתיב, ומקודשי תיראו, בהירא שריה פורסא דנורא, לעל קהלון לחייבי, דלא נטשין פיקודי אורייתא ועל דרך על דה באורך כלל, אית לדחלה. So that was the Aramaic. So now we're going to zoom in. Mitzvah, ליראת הקודש ברוך הוא בדרך כלל ובדרך פרט. It's a mitzvah to have reverence for the Holy Blessed One, both in a general way and in a specific individual way. Mefaresh, and he explains. Hare Yirah, that is reverence, the fear that it's talking about, Rabbi Ashlag explains like this. There's different ways. I mean, fear is not just one thing, okay? There's fear of sin, for example, fear of being separated from God. Rabbi Baruch Shalom Ashlag says, Yirat Hashem, the basic Yirat Hashem that we all need to cultivate is the fear of being separated from God, doing something that's going to separate us from him. And the most basic aspect of that is because, of course, when we do things that separate us from God, which are receiving for ourselves alone, and we is the noise of the children's playground bothering you? It's pretty noisy. Is it coming out over the microphone?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, you can't hear anything.
I can't hear anything.
Oh, okay. All right, because this is quite loud for me, but if you can't hear, it's okay. All right. So the aspect of Yirah is there's, being afraid is if when we're using our will to receive for ourselves alone, we're in opposition of God. And that actually causes us to be separated from him. And it's that separation which Rabbi Ashlag teaches us is actually the punishment, okay? It's that separation itself which is the punishment. So the Yirah is that we need to be concerned. We need to be afraid not to get into that situation where we're actually doing something which is absolutely separating us from the Creator. Okay? Now that can be in big ways and it can be in little ways. All right? And only an individual person can really know what's appropriate for him. There's another aspect of Yirah, and I think this is called Yirah. It's what Rabbi Nachman and would also call Yirat HaRomamut. And this is a Yirah which is not being afraid from the sin and its consequences. It's being having that reverence, having that fear because of the awareness of the greatness of God. And what we mean by greatness is the tremendous, unequivocal love of God that God has for us, that he is good and does good on a unimaginable level. And even if we can't see it, to really, really try to focus on it and have that awareness that we believe that everything that happens comes from his goodness. Okay. And that's Rav v'Shalit. And the other aspect is because every single thing is part of his providence. There's no such thing as something happening to us or around us or whatever, which is not part of his providence. And his providence is always the conduct of he is good and does good. And besides him, we don't add anything to his essence. So you've got two aspects of Yirah. You've got Yirah from the aspect of doing a sin and being separated. I don't want to be there. I don't want to get into that place. And you've also got reverence and Yirah that I don't want to be separated from him because I have so much veneration. Okay? So the way to fulfill Yirah can actually have quite a lot of different gradations to it. And I'm not knocking any of them. They call the Yirat HaChet a sort of lower one, and the Yirat HaRomamut a higher one. But we've got within ourselves so many different levels that sometimes, we need to activate our Yirat HaChet, and sometimes our Yirat HaRomamut is more appropriate. We are complex beings we're not just one level. We haven't got just one, a level of spirituality within us. We've got, it's called a tzibor, community. We've got the tzaddik, we've got the beinoni, and we've got the rasha within us. So for the tzaddik part of ourselves, Yirat HaRomamut would be the more appropriate. But for the beinoni and the rasha part of ourselves, maybe the Yirat HaChet is more appropriate. So I think it's worth sort of like looking at Yirat Hashem as a much more diverse idea than just one thing, okay? And seeing its nuances and seeing its gradations, and then it becomes not something to push away or to be frightened of or to say, no, I don't want to deal with that, which a lot of people do in this generation. But to actually be willing to say, okay, I need to deal with that side of my nature. How do I deal with the negative side of my nature? And to have the different, and be aware and have that ability to look at Yirat Hashem in its different forms. Okay, so the Zohar goes on to say, Mishum sheyesh la'adam yitra'eh mipnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu tamid, because a person needs to have reverence before God always. כמו שאומר, כמו שכתוב, לירא את השם הנכבד והנורא הזה, את השם אלוקיך. To have reverence for God's awesome, honored name of the Lord your God. ומשום יראה זו, and it's from this יראה, ישמור את דרכיו. He will guard his ways. Fear, just plain fear, like if you're talking about fear in general, it keeps us safe. Okay? It's a mechanism which is given to human beings to keep us safe. If we weren't afraid of things, okay, we would do crazy things. All right? Like if we didn't have, a natural fear of heights or something like that, people would, jump out the window and think they could fly, or I don't know, all sorts of stuff. Fear is healthy mechanism up to a point. Okay, it keeps us on the straight and narrow, and it keeps us safe in the world. It's a warning signal for us. Okay, so also Yirat Hashem, also in its lowest form, fine. It keeps us on the path. All right. V'yirah hi makom shenikra yirah, dainu malchut, and the Yirah, and it can be, like I say, the lower Yirah, the higher Yirah, is a consciousness when it has the word makom, which usually translated as place. It's more understandable to translate it either as desire or as consciousness, okay, which is designated as Yirah, is the Malchut, okay? Now, why is Yirah connected especially with the Malchut? So the Malchut is the Sfirah, which really has choice, okay? It's the Sfirah where we choose. Are we going to go in the way of God? Or are we going to go the other way? And we've always got this free choice. We've always got this, pulling at us. And it's a moment-to-moment choice. All right? And the reason why it's this moment-to-moment is because God wants it that way. That we always are in balance. We always have that free choice available to us. Okay? And so therefore, if a person is, reached up to be a tzaddik, then his Yetzer Hara is going to be, much bigger than other people's in order to keep him balanced. So he's always got a free choice. So that's why Yirah really belongs to the Malchut, because it's the Sfirah of choice. All right, which way am I going to allow myself to be governed in this moment? Am I going to go in the way of connection with God, or am I going to go in the other way, God forbid? But it's choice, all right? So Yirah is that first thought of the Malchut is, oh, I'd like to go in the negative, but Yirah, what would happen if I do? I will, God forbid, become separated from God, or I can then think, wait a minute, what about serving God because he is great in love and the master of all? That's another level of Yirah. And so the Malchut can say, oh, okay, wait a minute, I need to focus on that and make my choice in another way, and make my choice just in the way of Dveikut with God, of unity with God. Okay? So Yirah absolutely is the quality of the Malchut, and it's also the gateway, the Zohar says, for developing faith. All right. Yirat Hashem, having reverence for God and his commandments and the Torah, is the gateway for developing the vessel and the light of faith in God. Faith in God is both a vessel and a light. What does it mean? It means, first of all, is to recognize that having faith in God isn't easy. And it's something we would like to have, but we have to develop it. We have to work on it. We have to practice it. Okay, we have to build the desire for faith. And we build that desire for faith, first of all, by noticing that we don't have it. Okay, we don't have what we would consider faith in God. And so we work through building it. And the more we work on our Yirah, the more we are able to build that vessel for faith, and that it will then allow the light of faith to come in. Okay. Mishum sham shorei yirat HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So in the Malchut is where the light of having reverence for God can shine. V'nikret Yirat Hashem, and it's called Yirat of the name of God, Hashem, shetzrichim li'arei mipanav, to have reverence for him. V'zehu sod katuv, And this is the inner meaning of what is written, Umekodshai tira'u, that I'm not quite sure, that my holy places or those who sanctify me you should have reverence. Ki bi'yirah zo she'em malchut, shora shevet shel eish lakot et rasha'im she'enam shomim mitzvah Torah. So with Yirah, which is the malchut, also is the sort of shevet is like a cane or something of fire to smite the wicked who don't keep the Torah and mitzvot. Because the punishments come from the malchut. So, like I say, we've got to be really sensitive to the language here and really look and see what this language means, rather than just saying, oh, I don't like that. Okay, all right, which of course nobody likes that sort of language. All right, it brings up all sorts of it certainly brings up very difficult memories from my past. I was sent as a child to a Christian school, and they didn't hesitate to, take the cane and hit children. And that's the same, I think, happened to my husband, Zichrono Livracha. That type of language immediately, presses my buttons, and it probably presses other people's buttons too. So what does it mean, rather than, just reacting? So let's go back for a moment to what we said is the sin and what's the punishment, okay? And the sin is actually using our will to receive for ourselves alone and forgetting that there's something called Hashem in the world, okay? And just sort of going off on our own wills to receive, our own tangents of a will to receive for ourselves alone, okay? And what's the fire? The fire is the shame. When you remember what you did and you're so upset and you're so, upset about the whole thing, and you're sort of like blushing, furiously, you're really upset about it. And, you sort of wake up in the middle of the night and you feel all hot under the pillow, and you feel, oh God, So the fire is not something out there. The fire is something within us that, like, oh no, so I really do that? Okay, it's the feeling of, oh God, a feeling of shame. Okay, that's what the fire is. Okay, and what's the Rishaim? It's not anybody out there. It's not talking about other people or whatever, or calling ourselves Rishaim. But it's that part of ourselves, like we said, we've got the whole community within ourselves. It's the part of ourselves which is still immature, which is still wanting to use its will to receive for itself alone. Okay? And it's still, it's still in that very immature state. Okay? And so we have the more developed part of ourselves, the developing part of ourselves, and the immature part of ourselves, okay, which still wants to act in its sort of, immature state of receiving for itself alone, and it doesn't want to keep the mitzvot of the Torah. Now, keeping the mitzvot of the Torah, I don't mean mechanical keeping them, okay? A lot of people keep the mitzvot of the Torah, okay, but we're all still Rishaim, okay? What does it mean? It doesn't mean mechanical keeping them. It means really keeping them because that we want to keep them because God himself commanded, like we want to fulfill his words in order to provide a channel of goodness to come down into the world, because he taught us that through the positive commands and the negative commands, we can keep that channel of goodness flowing, because if we're doing the commandments of the Torah, lishma, unconditionally, for the sake of God, okay? Which if we're trying to do them for getting a reward, that's not really keeping the mitzvot of the Torah. We might be keeping them outwardly, but that's not what he means here. It means really, really to keep the mitzvot of the Torah lishma, to open those channels. Okay. Okay. So the consequences, the punishments, I really, like I said, I'm a bit allergic to that word, and you might be as well. So the onashim, meaning like the negative consequences, I prefer that word, I find it easier, but in malchut are coming from the malchut. And the malchut is, the governance. It's actually simply consequences. What governance was I using when I acted like this? Oh, I did that. I was behaving like that. I kind of like, okay, then I feel ashamed. I feel sorry. I recognize the separation that it's caused, and I want to do tshuva. I want to come back. Okay, so therefore there is a way, there is a reason to have reverence, to have fear of doing of behaving in this way, behaving in the will to receive for itself alone, b'derech klal. And what Rabbi Ashlag here says, that when it says b'derech klal in the general way, he means Yirah onesh. We don't want to be acting in a way that's our will to receive for ourselves alone, which is going to separate us from the Creator. ובצע באורך פרט, כד ידע ברנש מן איהו יראת השם, דאיהו דחלה דחביבותא, דהי עיקר ויסוד הדלמה חמלה לקודשא בריך הוא. היראה אביד לנטר כל פיקודי דאורייתא, ונווה ברנש עבד נאמן לגבי קודשא בריך הוא כדגה ייעוד. ובצע באורך פרט, ואחר כך, and when we've got that aspect of Yirah under control, yesh lefachad mipanav b'derech prat. We need to have reverence from him, or have fear of him, whatever we want to say. And in the individual aspect, dahainu k'shadam yodea ma yirat Hashem. When a person really understands what Yirat Hashem is. Now, we said it's more explained in other places, and that's having Yirah, having reverence for God, because he is great in loving kindness and the ruler of all. His mercy is on everything. There isn't anything outside of him, and our good deeds pale away in comparison to his goodness. When a person attains the aspect of the Malchut itself. So it's not explicit here what Rabbi Ashlag means, and what the Zohar. Wait a minute, what font is that? No, that's Rabbi Ashlag means the midat of the Malchut. But I think if we think about everything that we've talked about so far, we can see that the midat of the Malchut is the choice. Okay, what choices am I making? And can I think ultimately the Malchut is the vessel which originally was in the Ein Sof, and wants to be filled with the light of the Ein Sof, wants to come to Dveikut with God, wants to come to unity with God, okay? And therefore, it's the higher level of the Malchut, okay? So when we really work on Yirat Hashem, we gradually go through these different levels of Yirat Hashem, and we can attain from the lower to the higher. All right. Shezohi Yirah michamat Ahavah. This is Yirah because of love, because we love God so much, because we can sense the love that he has for us, and because we want to love him also. This is a higher aspect of Yirah, and it's Yirah because of love. And it's so strong that ultimately it becomes the main aspect and the foundation of loving the Holy Blessed One. This Yirah actually makes it that he can keep all the mitzvot of the Torah. That a person will become a faithful servant to the Holy Blessed One as is fitting. There's in the main articles on Yirah and Ahavah, which appear in the first volume of the Zohar tells us that Yirah and Ahavah are never separated. You actually cannot have the love of God without having reverence for God. Okay? You simply can't. It just doesn't work. Because we'll talk about what love actually is, all right? And Yirah as a foundation for love is always there, because one needs to love God in times when everything is flowing and everything is good, okay? And we also need to love God when things are hard and difficult and we're suffering. And that love and Yirah is always present so that we don't diminish in our love for God in the difficult times, and that we don't forget ourselves in when everything is flowing. All right, because when everything is flowing, we tend to, we tend to sort of like forget God in a way. And so we need to have that Yirah as that connection with love always. So it doesn't surprise me, to see what we learnt in the parasha, that we have Yirah first and Ahavah second. Okay, because Yirah is the basis and Ahavah comes second as the next one. Samach tet. Pikuda la Ahavah. Va ukimna uchimu de kutchabrichu. The Baiba Nashloachmale Rechimu Sagika Avraham. Dochim le lekutchabrichu bakama rechimu. Umasa gufei v'nafshei legabei. Mikan olifna man dochim le lekutchabrichu. Ihu mekayem esa amiran ila v'tata. Valda kol inun esa nisyoni ditnasa Avraham. V'kayim bekulhu. Lekabel או לקבל esa amiran. כל ניסיון האמירה היא והתנסה בו אמירה וקיים בי. Mitzvah לאהבה, the mitzvah of love. והעמדנו שאהבת הקודש ברוך הוא פירושו שהאדם צריך לאהוב אותו אהבה רבה כאברהם. The mitzvah of loving God, that we need to love God, means that a person needs to love him with tremendous love, like Abraham. She'ahav et HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba'ahava rabba, who loved the Holy Blessed One with tremendous love. And the Zohar in the first one of the Zohar, it says that ahava rabba means loving God both when things are going well and when things are going in a difficult way. All right. And as we know, Avraham Avinu really demonstrated that so much in his life. He had all these trials, okay, which were, I think any one of them would be incredible, but of course the Akedah is the most well-known of them, where he's actually asked to sacrifice, give up his one child that he waited for and prayed for so much, and came, in his very, very, very late age, as a miracle to him and his wife, Sarah, and through whom the promise of the seed is given. and the promise of his continuation is given, and suddenly he's asked to offer that up. And yet he doesn't doubt God, and he continues steadfast in his love for God. Masa gufo v'nafsho elav. He just gave up his own will. He gave his body and his soul to God. Mikan v'lamadnu. From here we learn, Mi shohev et HaKadosh Baruch Hu, hu makayem asara mamarot. Whoever loves the Holy Blessed One, he fulfills the 10 articles. I think mamarot is the 10. Mamarot is usually the it says the 10 sayings both with which God created the world. Okay. V'yom Elohim yihi or, v'yom Elohim yihi rakia. Let there be, then God said, let there be light, and God said, let there be a firmament. And if you actually count them up, all the ones, and it says, and God said, you actually find that they are 9. But the Zohar tells us that the very first sentence, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, actually is the very first one, which includes everything. And then the others are the sort of like the details of how that unfolds. And they are called the 10 Ma'amarot. Okay. And here the Zohar adds a detail, which says they are the 10 Sfirot. And they go from above to below. Valken, that is come from God down to a human being. ועל כן, כל אלה 10 ניסיונות שנתנסה בהם אברהם ועמד בכולם, הם כנגד 10 מאמרות. And therefore, all the 10 trials with which Abraham was tried, and he was upstanding with all of them, they are for the 10, these 10 Ma'amarot. Now, as we know, the 10 Sfirot are not just from above to below, they're also from below to above. So all these 10 Nisyonot, all these 10 trials which Abraham was given, were his opportunity to give the light to God, to show his love for God, to give the light to God, and therefore create the 10 Sfirot from below to above. All right. And in fact, the Holy Ari actually teaches us that it's the Sfirot that we create which go from below to above, okay, are actually the Sfirot which actually hold the light. All right. The light which comes from above to below is light that we can't hold unless we first created a vessel for it, and the appropriate vessels are, of course, the vessels in holiness, which we create through our efforts from below to above. So these nisyonot are actually the formation of the vessels with which to hold this light. And I think it's very interesting that there's another article in the Zohar which says, if you look at the word bihibaram, okay, which was when they were created, appears in the 2nd chapter of Bereshit. It's also talking about the creation of the world. It's the letters of Abraham's name. So we see that with these trials that Abraham overcame, he's like contributing or creating, in a way, the method, the way, the vessels by which we are also able to create the vessels of loving God in good times and in bad. And those are vessels which actually bring the light of creation into the world in a way that we can actually perceive it, and the bounty can flow not only for ourselves, but for everybody. So I think this is a fascinating paragraph here. עין. ועל דרך אינון עשר ניסיוני, וכל קיים בהו אברהם, בגין להתקשר והתדבק בימינה דקודש בריך הוא, תהי אהבה רבה. מה טעם יקרה אהבה רבה? בגין מן דקאים בהי אהבה, התקשר בעולמה אילאה. אהבת עולם, דרזה דעולמה תתאה, והתקשר בירחים ודילי, וכולו רזה חדה בלא פירודה, ותמר רזה דאהבה, וכימו דסליק על כל פולחנין דעולמה, והתייקר שמי דקודש בריך הוא יתיר מכולו, והתברך, בריך הוא לעולם עולמי עולמין, ורזה דאהבה יתאמר. ועל דאינון עשר, and therefore they are 10 trials, which are for the 10 Sfirot, okay, which are for the 10 Sfirot of going from below to above. U'bekulam amad Avraham, and all of them were, Abraham was like amazing with them. Mishum shnikshav nitdabek mimino shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because he connected and kept hold of the right hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shenikra Ahavah Rabbah, which is called Ahavah Rabbah, tremendous love. Tainu Chesed Dezer Anpin, which is loving kindness. And I think that it is such an amazing idea that to understand what this, having the fortitude to see love and the love of God, that God is good and does good in everything that happens, is amazing. And for me, I have to say that the nisayon, the trial that of Avraham, which for me speaks to me the most, actually, is the one where he's been told by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to come into Eretz Yisrael, and he's been in Eretz Yisrael, and he's been in the land of Israel, and then there's a famine. Okay, and obviously if there's a famine, there's no food. What's he going to do? And so he goes down to Egypt. Now, on the way to Egypt, he suddenly realizes something, and he says to his wife, you're very beautiful. They might try to kill me and take you captive. I mean, one couldn't trust the people around there, I suppose. And can you say you're my sister? There's inner meanings on all of this, but the simple thing was that did come about, and Sarah gets taken captive by Pharaoh. And the Zohar says that Avraham Avinu was devastated, and he wept and prayed for Sarah all through the night. And yet, he never doubted, it says, the midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he never doubted what's the midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that he is good and does good. And also, he felt that he'd done something wrong, or he'd made a mistake, whatever, or sinned or whatever, because he hadn't waited for God to tell him to go down to Egypt, but he'd just gone because of the famine. But he hadn't waited for God's word. So he thought that he'd brought this on Sarah, and he was really, really upset. And on the one hand, he's very upset, and he davens and he prays for Sarah. But on the other hand, at the same time, he realizes that everything is in God's hands, including our mistakes. So he doesn't doubt that they meant to be there, and he doesn't doubt that God's goodness brought him there. Okay, so although he's having this very difficult nisayon, he trusts God and he trusts everything that's happening, that he's part of, even though his mistake is part of it. And I find that very, very, very important for me to understand that our mistakes are part of our path, and we have to understand our sins are part of our path also. And before the action that we talked about, we have free choice to have Yirah Hashem and not do the negative. But if unfortunately we have done it, then we have the opportunity to do tshuva and to not to sort of like live with the burden of, oh God, I did whatever, but to understand that before the action, it was our free choice. After the action is what God wanted. And you really see this in this nisayon of Abraham's, that he stays connected with the right hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with the chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on both sides of the coin, Ahavah, which is chesed of Zerampin. And of course, there was a reason for Abraham and Sarah to go down to Egypt. And the Zohar tells us that because of the great tikkun that Sarah did, when the children of Israel then went down to Egypt so many 100 years later, a couple of 100 years later, they didn't sink to the very lowest 50th level, which would have been impossible to get them out. But because of the tikkun of Sarah, it was possible to bring them out and out of exile. So there was sort of this higher meaning. And of course, we don't know it in advance. It was another 200 years before it's revealed. Okay, so we have to have that faith, that Yirah Hashem, which is always together with the Ahavah. So, Ma tam shnika Ahavah, what's the reason why it's called Ahavah, tremendous love? Umishum shemisha omeid ba'avah zo, whoever is upholding this love, niksha ba'olam elyon, he's in affinity, a form with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with a higher world, which is Zerampin, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ahavat olam usod olam atachton, dahainu malchut. Ahavat olam is the inner meaning of the lower world, which is the malchut, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sorry, that's the Shekinah, I apologize. The higher world is the Zerampin, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The vessel, which is the malchut, is the aspect of the Shekinah, and they join together, they become one through this love. I think it's very interesting that the Zohar brings Ahavah Rabbah and Ahavat Olam, because of course this is reflected in the difference in the prayers. That the love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is connected with the Malchut. V'akol Ahavah Rabbah v'Ahavat Olam usod echad beli perud beinehem. And of course, when there's great love, when there's everlasting love, which, from one side or the other side, it doesn't really matter, because they are one, without any separation at all between them. And that's the essence of love. So here we've learnt the inner meaning of love. Through the love, the name of the Holy Blessed One is more precious than anything else, and becomes blessed. Baruch hu le'olam u'l'ol me'olamim. Blessed is he for forever. V'nit be'er sod Ahavah. And this is the inner meaning of love. Now we could carry on to the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema. 1 second. Okay, yeah, let's do the next paragraph of Kriyat Shema. There's one other bit I'd like to bring before we go. If you've got a few extra minutes, Ayin Aleph. פיקוד על המקרה קריאת שמע, שני זמנים בכל יומה, אחד לקבל דרגה דיוממה, ואחד לקבל דרגה דליליה. ולאכללה ביוממה דרגה דליליה, ולאכללה בליליה דרגה דיוממה. ותמה ועודה טרין זמנין בכל יומה, אחד ביוממה ואחד בליליה. So it's a mitzvah to read Kriyat Shema twice every day. Achad keneged madrigat hayom. One is for the level of the day, which is the Zerampin. And the Zohar tells us that the aspect of the day is when the Holy Blessed One is light. His light is revealed to us and we're feeling good. Okay. But we also have the aspect of the night, which is when things are difficult for us. So it doesn't just necessarily mean the actual daylight or the night, although we do it also in practice. This is when we read Shema, okay? And we read the Shema twice to include the aspect of the day in the level of the night, and include the aspect of the night in the madriga of the day. Now, we talked about Yirah, okay? So the aspect of the night when things are going difficult for us, okay? That's when the Yirah, which needs to be always there as the foundation of the love, comes to its fore, all right? And that's the aspect of the night. And then we want both to be included. The Ahavah and the Yirah need to be included with each other. So in practice, of course, the halacha is that we read Shema. We say Shema, once in the day, or once in the day, once in the night. Okay. Ukaval madnu, and we've already learnt this. Val ken suprim shnei pamim b'kol yom. So we read it twice every day, once in the day and once in the night. All right. Now, I got this wonderful piece from the Sfat Emet, which we don't really have time, but I'd like to do it anyhow. So let me just find where it was. Do new share. I think it might be there. Try anyhow. I don't know if you can see that or not. I'll try again. Share screen. There you go. I find it quite difficult to define what love actually is. What does it consist of? And I found this Sfat Emet here and the explanation by Rabbi Ayal to be actually very helpful. So let's just read this together. B'Parshat Shema Yisrael v'Ahavta. B'Midrash mi li b'shamayim וכולי, באמת שורש נפשות בני ישראל דבקים בקדוש ברוך הוא, ולכן אהבה נשרשת בנפשות בני ישראל למעלה. In Parshat Shema Yisrael, and you should love the Lord your God, in the Midrash it says, who do mi li b'shamayim, who do I have in heaven? And in truth, the root of the souls of Bnei Israel are united with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, love is rooted. It's like part of the souls of Bnei Israel above. HaNefesh yesh la kama bechinot, but the soul has different levels. Kamo shekatuv what is that? Oh, yes. Well, I don't understand the word, but anyhow, it says the 5 names for the soul, which is Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yechidah. And Yechidah, which is the highest possible level, okay, of the soul. Hishoresh HaNeshamot is the root of the souls, Shedveikim ba'achdut Hashem, who are completely one with God. Aval ish Yisrael tzarich liyageh atzmo b'kol nafshecha, אפילו בזה הנפש נדבק לגוף בעולם הזה. But we, children of Israel, need to work with all our soul, which is the lowest level of soul. We have nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, and yichida. Afilu b'zeh nefesh nidbak l'guf. Even with the soul, that part of our soul which is, packaged in the body of this world. Kamosh katuv, b'midrash, that's what it means, but in the midrash, shachal afar nafshenu. Our soul is in the dust. Kamosh katuv b'galut ata shanefesh nitmat b'guf vevle olam. Like the soul is in exile and it's sort of like sunk in the body and in the vanities of this world. Nevertheless, even though we do get sunk in it, we get stuck in our daily lives, we lose concentration, we're focused on the news and all this sort of stuff, okay? Nevertheless, we do need to awaken that love every day. So that we give the opportunity of the soul below to approach, to be like the soul which is above. And I think this is very interesting because we learn that, in fact, most of our soul is up in the higher worlds and only a little bit has come down into this world. So we've all the time got input from our higher soul to our lower soul, which is trying all the time to keep us on track, wake us up, be in connection, all right? So saying Shema twice a day, awakening that love, remembering that love, okay, enables that moment of connection with our higher soul, with our lower soul here. And therefore we have the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema in the morning and in the evening. So when the soul goes up above, and when it comes down in the person below, b'shacharit or b'shabbat, or b'shacharit in the morning, or b'shabbat, sheyesh neshama yitira, and on Shabbat where we have more of our higher soul, that's when the love awakens in the souls of the children of Israel to the uttermost extent. Because the main part of love is according to the illumination of the soul in the human being, which I thought that's very beautiful. And what Rabbi Ayal writes, I found it helpful, so I'll read it to you, and I'll just read it in the English. There are many, many circles of different loves which surround a human being. The word love is a tremendously high word, like the words for dveikut and closeness and longing for God. Nevertheless, we also find ourselves using with the word of love for very lowly things. For example, I love fried fish, okay? And yet it doesn't sound strange in our eyes, despite using what should be a very high word, love, which is a highest emotion, which should be, turned to higher consciousness. And the Torah commands us to love the Lord, to love God, v'ahavta. The essence of this commandment teaches that on the most inner level, the union, the one love truly exists in the fullest and most complete sense, and that is the love of God. Because what is love? It's a tremendously deep desire to unite, to belong to give everything up to the end, beyond the end, like kolot, without thinking about without accounting, even to giving one's soul. So that is the real meaning of love. He goes on to say, many people love different types of food, but nobody is going to give up their life for it. Despite this, through thousands of years, the people of Israel as a whole, in its different stages and different levels, gives its life just like that on the fulfillment of his commandments of the Creator and on the desire for unity with him. This is the true love, the love of Yechidah, which exists. Every other type of love is a lowly love, partial love, and just is sort of like a shadow of the truest love, and it's just sort of like it's the main love. Everything else is like crumbs of love. And to this love, the Sfat Emet calls the love of Bechina Yechidah Shebenefesh, is the aspect of Yechidah, of the soul. That is possible to find this love in the deepest parts of ourselves, in its unity and in its essence. And it's only turned towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is the most profound level of belonging, of inner longing, and inner belonging. And this is where the love of God lies. However, the Torah commands us, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, b'chol levavecha, u'b'chol nafshecha, u'b'chol ma'odecha. That is to say, the commandment of love is not turned only to these heroic moments of total mesirut nefesh, total self-sacrifice, but it also turned towards the other levels of the soul, which are more external. What we've called earlier the lowly loves. They also need tikkun, and they also need to be raised up to join with the love of the Lord our God. And the way to do this is with the illumination of the soul, that the illumination of the soul comes into a practical and physical reality. And he says here, it's like the connection between a man and a woman, which have the most deepest parts, the aspect of Yechidah in the Nefesh, which join the two sides of the partnership to each other, and the children who join them, and that inner voice which accompanies them and says to them, this is my essence, etzeme atzamai basami bsari, essence of my essence, flesh, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. But the husband and wife need to bring this in the expression of their love also into the daily work, in washing the dishes, taking out the rubbish, looking after the children, and all the other things that are part of our daily lives. And the way to do this is to make the soul present, that the depth of the connection needs to be present in the circles of the daily secular world, in the daily life. And the looking after the house should not be just something technical. It is another way of expressing the love of God, the love which exists in the neshama. And this is the way also in relation to Chai Olamim. We love God not only in the limud Torah, in learning Torah, or at time of prayer, or God forbid in time of fear, like we're in right now, or all sorts of other tests. But the love should also be daily, that we can offer it to God in the little things as well. That was the piece that I really, really, really wanted to bring, because I felt it was a beautiful and practical expression of how do we take this wonderful learning that we've learned today from the Zohar and from the Sfat Emet and bring it into our reality of our daily life. Okay, great. All right. So I'm going to stop there. Okay. Oh, hello, Pussy. All right. Okay. Anybody got any questions?
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Thank you, Yirah.
All right.